Hi everyone, welcome to Beyond Binary Thinking, a podcast where we try to inform ourselves whilst remaining open to challenges and corrections as we meet differing opinions. From Plymouth, I'm Chris.
From Bangkok, I'm Shane, and I use he, him pronouns.
Okay, so a good introduction, because today we're going to talk about a topic I've wanted to cover since we started this podcast, really. The name kind of lends itself to the area, and I'm talking with one of my favourite people, and he was a groomsman at my wedding. So Shane, please introduce yourself.
I am Shane, and I'm pretty young. I'm a 25-year-old queer activist who lives in Bangkok, and I'm from an immigrant family. If that gives a little bit more of context, I public speak about mental health and queer identities and LGBTQ identities. I'm a transgender man, and I use he, him pronouns, as I have mentioned before, and we will go into a little bit more of a deep dive into identities later.
I'm looking forward to it. Can you see that?
Was plus Dutch for cheers.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, back in the game.
That was a pretty good jingle.
Thank you very much. I go for the short version because people's attention spans these days ain't what they used to be.
Yeah, tell me about it. ADHD here.
So let's get right into it then. I'd like to talk about trans and non-binary rights and issues. We'll get into J.K. Rowling and the letter, and why the right consider trans activists to be so dangerous, cultural Marxists who are trying to destroy the world with their identity politics and cancel culture. So yeah, let's go straight in. What does this topic mean to you?
So basically, especially when we're talking about trans rights, I think a lot of people often misunderstand what we're actually talking about. I guess one of the off the bat things that I always say is it's not like we are denying that biology exists. It's just the fact that we are trying to differentiate between sex assigned at birth versus gender identity, which mean two very different things. And also how sex assigned at birth, gender identity, and gender expression mean very different things. And which is also being proven in science and biologically. So technically, we'll
have
not
links
even,
and references in the doobly.
Exactly. So we're not even like denying biology. It's just,
I mean, that is the common
saying,
misconception I've come across talking to people. People are like, yeah, okay, like people are allowed to call themselves what they want, but they can't deny biology. And I'm like, and you know, like as with often these things, when you hear a very intelligent person on the right speaking and defending their side, they sound entirely reasonable. But you're like,
oh yeah,
if you allow them to mischaracterize what their opponents are saying and their position. So absolutely, that video you shared with me, which I'll link to and recommend, was a fantastic example of showing that, you know, it's not people denying science, biology. People that study this actually have quite a nuanced and deep understanding that for some reason doesn't translate to arguments on Twitter.
No, absolutely not. But like all the arguments on Twitter are also by people who are so usually arguments are opposing trans identities, like trans identities don't exist. Usually they are from people who are so caught up in their own heads and in their own idea of what trans activists are, and that we are all aggressive. And I like to call that trans anger, which is something that a lot of people take very wrong. It's like when you type something on chat, there is no emotions connected to it, and it is very difficult to see emotions through words when you're reading it.
Whereas people can misread your intentions.
Exactly. And usually what happens is when a trans person is making legit proper arguments against everything that they're claiming to be biology, I mean the trans, like the opposing side, they often read our words as angry and aggressive, and that's where everything goes to shit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exacerbated by lazy journalism, right? Like, I know it's cheap in a world of dwindling money and too much free press. It's just a
Clickbait.
cheap and easy news story to be like, someone got angry on Twitter, and you're like, that's not
Right.
news. Like, oh my God, that's
Right.
a 14-year-old news story. Like,
Exactly.
happens every day.
I mean, it's so much about clickbait nowadays that like I have gone into articles about people being canceled and like all of like transphobia and things like that, and I'm like, wait, hang on a second, like, but have we actually heard the other side though? And
Well, so
I'll
this
kind
is
of
what I find, trying to explore and play devil's advocate and finding a lot of differing viewpoints.
right.
I talk to many different people. And often what comes up is, oh, but look at this person who said something transphobic and then they got fired. Isn't that unfair? And you're like, yeah, like maybe, right? Like I do believe in free speech, but as anyone that's familiar with this discussion now knows, actions do have consequences. So,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
companies are also free to fire someone if they find that they're bigoted and hostile to work with. Like it works both ways. That's the freedom that they have as well. Also, as is often the case, like with these things, I'll point out, like, the way it comes across sometimes, and a similar example is with Black Lives Matter or all of these progressive points. Someone's like, oh, but what if it goes too far? Won't someone think of the white cis men that will get affected by this? And you're like, okay, like maybe we'll go so far fighting social justice things that the world will change and poor white people will be, third-class citizens. Or maybe not. I mean, like 100 years of history says that we probably won't go too far tackling these issues.
Exactly. I think one of the things that people often forget is all of these movements that have been very prominent, especially now and by young activists. It usually stems from a long history of injustices from their foreparents and like from their ancestors too. So it's not just like something that came up in the past 5 years. This has been going on for a very, very long time. This has been something we've been struggling with for a very, very long time. It's just now it's more prominent because we have the means of having our voices heard, and we have the means of being vocal in a safer environment.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, if we're going to get the positive thing, like all these arguments, as is always the case, right? Like there's a time where people first say, they just ignore you, and then they can't ignore you anymore, then they get angry with you, and then they mock you, and the progression is eventually like,
yeah.
The reason why I think there's so much resistance is because you are winning the argument, and particularly with the younger generation. I think more people than ever kind of get a lot of these issues and understand them. I think what you often come against, I define it as high school level science, right? Where someone's like, oh, but that doesn't make common sense because I learned in high school that there's only two genders and that's XX
Right.
and XY. And all of this you said goes against that, therefore it's nonsense. So for those that aren't initiated and haven't done as much research as even I, but definitely you, could you explain a bit, like non-binary genders, like biologically, or is it gender the right word, or sex? Well, explain that, break it down for me. As you went very succinctly at the start. So we've got sex,
sure.
we've got gender, and then we've got
absolutely. So we've got sex assigned at birth, which is usually assigned by doctors when they see your genitalia. So the chances are that we don't even know our chromosomes unless and until there are actually intersex characteristics.
And there are some edge cases, right? Like it's not common, but
absolutely.
there are more than two genders, I think, right? There's actually quite a few.
Two sex assigned at birth, which is what people have a misconception for, whereas there is male, female, which is assigned based on your genitalia, and then there is intersex, which is basically having either the different sex characteristics.
Yeah, so there's not always just XX and XY. There's XY, and look it up.
Oh yeah,
links in the thing. But
I think there are about 26 different chromosomal or 36 chromosomal makeups that we don't even know ourselves. And that's just the things that we have found out about our bodies.
So the average pundit, they're like, look, guys, it's pretty simple. There's only two things, right? Like, I learned this in school. You're like, Yeah, no, like there's a lot more to
No,
learn.
actually, no.
Now,
Yeah.
okay, so then for the more advanced critics, they say, okay, but that's 0.001% of people. Why is this even an issue? It's such a niche edge case.
Well, but that's where the issue comes in, right? Because you've got issues like corrective rape. You've got issues like doing surgeries on younger, like not on younger, but like on babies without the consent of parents, or things like that. There have been so many occasions where corrective surgery for intersex people were done when doctors saw that, like, oh, they have intersex characteristics, so let's just correct this part of the sex characteristics to make them male or to make them female. And then later the child grows up and the child is like, well, no, actually, that was the wrong thing to do because I'm the opposite. Right. So that's what happens. And that is also like just one example of the many intersex characteristics, right? Or intersex identity.
Yeah, and I think the other point is to disagree with myself. It is a minority issue, but in some cultures it's very difficult to come out, right?
Exactly.
And so it's one of those things where, especially going to Thailand, I was 15 when I moved to Thailand, I noticed that in cultures where it's more tolerated, I'm not saying Thailand doesn't have its own problems, but where it's more tolerated, it's more prevalent, which makes you wonder, well, okay, it's massive minority, but in America, if you come out to your parents in the Bible Belt, you're likely to end up homeless. So yeah, we don't know how many more people there could be if we were allowed to talk about it openly without fear of judgment.
Exactly. And then there's also the thing, like, even if it's like a 0.001 or whatever the percentage is, it's still a big amount of people. It's still like from the entire the entire population of the world. It's still a lot of people. It's still something that we do need to study eventually, like not eventually, but now, because it's a very important topic to understand. Because what ends up happening if we don't do that is we create in ourselves and in other people without the correct terminology and without the correct knowledge about it, we create fear of things that we don't understand, and that's what's the most that's the most harmful thing when we're talking about different genders and different gender identities and different gender expressions, and also different sex assigned at birth.
Okay, like I say, if people want to explore it, I really would recommend doing the research. We don't have to go all into the science now, but if anyone that has an opinion on it, I'd recommend you do a bit of reading, because it's actually really interesting. Like for me, to find out that it's not black or white, it is beyond binary, right? Like it's amazing. So
it really is.
It's worth researching, and I think Radiolab, for example, I shared that link with you a couple of years ago, did a great breakdown of how complicated the science is, just of sex, let alone getting into gender, which is complicated. Gender's a funny one, because I remember, the 70s wave of feminism argument being like, gender is a complete societal construct, right? It is something we should do away with, and if we didn't have these prescribed roles by society telling men and women what they must do, how they must conform, what's acceptable behavior, then we wouldn't have these problems, right?
Absolutely. So basically it's a little divided when it comes to trans activists, and I'm only going to speak for myself because I cannot speak for the entire trans community.
I demand you speak for everyone now.
No, it's not going to happen. But like, I think personally for me, labels are very important. But for me to understand myself better, I know a lot of my friends who are trans activists don't like the labels, and do think that gender is a social kind of construct.
Gender is a social contract, but that doesn't mean it's not important, right? Like we are part of society. So I think like sometimes that argument is used to wave it away, and it's like, No, but it still
Exactly.
matters. Social contracts, we're social beings. Like getting a
Right.
job is a social contract. This stuff does matter, even if it's social contract, like it's constructed.
Exactly. And we've got one of those issues where you know, there is one gender out of all that is more privileged than the rest. And you know, we have to identify that, because
Hashtag winning.
eventually
Hashtag tiger blood.
no, because like eventually when we talk about social injustices, these are things that actually do come up, and these are things that are actually talked about, whether it's gender-based violence, whether it's pay gap, whether it's other things. And these are like prevalent and like prominent things that actually are talked about even in politics and outside of politics.
It was funny. So growing up, I think I was 18 when I heard about my high school friend transitioning, and it was a big shock to me. And I think my first take on it was, I don't understand. Like for me, gender's just not important, right? Like
Right.
I'm like, yeah, but why would you bother going through all of that? Like, you know, like dress how you want, fine, but I just didn't get the importance of it. I'm like, it just seemed like a lot of fuss and trauma and drama and pain and effort, where I'm like, I don't, you know, spend a lot of time trying to be male, trying to act like a male. What's the big deal?
Right.
Like, why, if you want to feel a bit more male or female, I'm like, yeah, go for it. I don't, why is it such a big traumatic drama?
That's the beauty of it in a way, right? Because you've got people telling you why you want to make such a big fuss about it, but the fact that that as a trans person, I'm willing to go through all of that actually proves that, like, well, for me at least, that it's really not a choice, because why would I want to make my own life difficult? And also another thing is, like, if dysphoria for me is a massive thing. For a lot of people, it's gender euphoria or no dysphoria at all. Dysphoria for me means not being content with the gender that sex I was assigned at birth, but also not being content with what my body looks like, because it doesn't fit my idea of what my gender looks like or what I want to look like. So kind of like a body dysmorphia kind of a thing, but also gender dysphoria, if that makes sense.
You
Little
know what,
bit.
logically, yes, it's hard to empathize. And I think, as I said, I did, you know, bookmark that story with when I was 18, first thinking about this for the first time.
Right.
My understanding has grown and matured somewhat, because I think that's the joy of being a cis white hetero male, is that I'm like, everything's cool for me. I don't have any problems.
Exactly.
I don't worry about any of these things. It's like,
exactly.
Okay, bully for me, but not everyone feels that way. Okay, cool.
Another thing for us as trans folks, I think is, like, for me, I want to pass. I want to pass as a cisgender man, even though I am not. But that's for my safety, and because that's what I want for my own body and for myself. A lot of people don't mind not passing. A lot of people don't want to pass at all, and I just, for me, it's one of those things where I just don't want to be in a position where people can use my trans identity against me.
Understandable.
But yeah, because like going into male bathrooms or like men's bathrooms is a terrifying thing for me, and even with like my own social anxiety and things like that, it's terrifying.
I don't understand how that became an argument. It's really weird to me for that to become the thing everyone gets obsessed with. I think, honestly, part of the media's obsession with this as an issue, it is like you used to have the bearded lady at a circus. I think it's that gawkish, voyeuristic,
Right.
oh, this is exciting and different, right? Like, I don't think it's,
Right.
I mean, obviously there are publications that fight it as an activist cause on both sides. There's the right that say, oh, this is against Christian values, and the left that says this is, stopping the Nazis.
Right.
But I think a lot of the rest of the coverage is just, isn't this interesting? Like, there might be a lady in your bathroom. Like, okay. I mean, we all grew up
I
in
mean,
a mixed gender bathroom, right, in our house. I don't know why
yeah.
this became such a big deal.
The funniest thing that around this topic that I had seen was what was her name? Caitlin Bennett, I think, if I'm not wrong. She went around a university and she started asking people who look like men, like people who look masculine, if it was okay to have tampons in the men's bathroom. And every student on that university campus was like, yeah, I mean, it doesn't bother me.
Mm.
And then
it blew my mind. It was at Facebook's HQ when I saw tampons in the male bathroom, and it was just a moment where I caught myself going, and I walked out to try and say it to someone. I was like, oh, but then I was like, was it matter? I don't care.
Right, exactly. Also, tampons can be used for very multiple different things. And not just for.
Yeah, if you've ever had a chronic nosebleed.
Exactly.
Or scuba diving, and you put them in so that if your underwater camera housing leaks,
yep,
first thing it hits. Yeah.
Yep. See, there are so many different things you can do with it, and all people think about is, well, it goes into a vagina.
You said it.
Yeah. And especially like the packaging of feminine hygiene product, and I'm gonna put that in like a little quotation thing here, because like everyone had such a massive problem with the female symbol being taken off of the feminine products, or like for products for people who bleed, basically, or bleed from their vaginas, or have periods. It's one of those things where it's such a simple repackaging thing. I just don't see why so many people make it such a big deal. Like, they're just taking a symbol off and making it more inclusive to everyone. It's not like we're taking your rights away.
Yeah, people do kind of think it's ridiculous. J.K. Rowling, right? This is what started the letter, the blog about, or the tweet about people who menstruate, and she's like, well,
right,
women, right? Like that's who you're talking about, and 99.9% of the times that is accurate. So I think it's kind of important. What often doesn't get delved into with this argument is how important are these things, right? Like, I mean, really on a scale, because someone angry on Twitter isn't news, but there's
right.
things that are like priority. Oh my God, this is outrage, and things that's like, I think that's just a tampon company getting some free press, right? Like, as someone in marketing, PR company, either coming out for or against this issue is going to get you free coverage in the news, and I think
exactly.
it's not a big issue, is it? Like, it's kind of a storm in a teacup.
So basically what happens is, when, especially with J.K. Rowling, like, don't get me wrong, like, I grew up reading the Harry Potter books. I am one of the biggest Harry Potter fans out there. When I was in high school, I used to do like little quizzes against my friends, and like whoever had the most superior knowledge about Harry Potter universe would get a free ice cream from the other people. So like I am all for it. I'm all for Harry Potter. But I think what has happened is, I look up to J.K. Rowling so much, and I think a lot of other trans folks do too, because we grew up feeling safe with her work, and to have your hero basically up and say that your identity doesn't matter at all is hurtful. And that's one of the reasons why there has been such a strong reaction to that by a lot of trans people.
I think a lot of the people who just look at the Twitter see a bunch of people shouting at J.K. Rowling. But if you look at the blog she wrote, again, the tweet about, you know, surely it's women, right? It isn't the most offensive thing she's done. And most of the backlash is the long blog she wrote with great analysis, link in the video below, saying that, you know, men are trying to barge into women's bathrooms, and as a rape survivor, I'm scared for all these trans people that are coming to attack us.
Exactly. And that's
is a dishonest mischaracterization of the position when someone's claiming that she's, oh, I'm just being accurate, right? I'm just being honest. I'm just interested in the truth. And it's like, that doesn't feel like this, you know?
No.
And the funny thing is, it resembles a lot of the attitude about how people used to talk about homosexuality. Right? I think there's this great thought experiment, right? If you're not sure whether something is discriminatory, just replace all of the nouns being used with Jews. And oh, the Jews are trying to do this. You're like, oh, that sounds bad, doesn't it?
That sounds bad, yeah. No, yeah, absolutely.
And the idea that these, you know, gay men are trying to get our children and rape our children, it's like, yeah, I've heard this language before. I know where it's coming from.
Yeah, exactly, definitely. I think one of the things that really hurts, especially as a trans person, as a survivor of sexual assault, and as someone who kind of never felt like they fit in, or being terrified of going into bathrooms myself, it's hurtful, because you're making the assumption, and I am going to say assumption, that every trans person, or in her idea, every trans woman that is using the women's bathroom are sexual predators, which is not what it is at all. It's
just a nonsense argument, right? I think the best meme I saw for it is, it's like a criminal learning accounting, just so he can get access to your bank account, and you're like, yeah, and it's like the Dr. Evil plan, right? Like, if you went through all that trouble, if you really were going to go through gender reassignment surgery, it'd be quicker just to walk into a bathroom and rape a woman, if that's what you were looking to do. You don't need to have any of those unnecessary extra steps. So it's just a nonsense argument that's quite easy to debunk, masquerading as, oh no, we're just being concerned and we're just being logical here. Like, if you look at the video again, which is brilliant, you know, the number of cases of trans people assaulting people in England, very, very low.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if eventually, I think all the trans people that I have talked to who use bathrooms that are that fit their gender identity, all of them, literally, we have this thing that we always say, where it's like, go in, don't make eye contact, go into the stall, come out, wash your hands first, and then come out.
This is the thing as well, in a changing room, or a male bathroom, a trans person in a male's bathroom, or a trans person in a female bathroom, there's none of those variables where you'd walk in and start swinging your dick around. And every time you're going into a stall and locking the door.
Exactly.
By definition. Like, yeah, it's a weird one. I don't know.
And I think one of the things that, like, a lot of people use as an argument is, would you really want to see a penis in a women's bathroom? But I haven't talked to one trans woman, and this is, like, from my personal experience of talking to a lot of trans women, and I can't speak for everyone, obviously. Like, I haven't talked to one trans woman who's like, yes, I go to women's bathroom just to be able to pee in urinals. Like, there's so much dysphoria around, like, even genitalia sometimes, that you don't even want to look at your own body. And that's what happens to me.
There's no urinals in a woman's bathroom, so, like, it can't come up.
Exactly. And yeah, it's just one of those things. And Caitlin Bennett went into this entire, I think that's her name, I can't remember entirely, but the gun girl, I don't know if you know about her. Liberty Hangouts, don't give her any views. No, but she literally went on campus and was like, yeah, but would you want urinals in the women's bathroom? And all the femme identifying, like femme presenting people on the campus were like, I mean, it doesn't bother me. And she just went, oh, so it's okay to have a man dressed as a woman walk into the women's bathroom. So a lot of times what happens is when transphobic people or like bigoted people don't get the answer that they want to hear, they will try to flip their arguments into a more manipulative.
Sure. I mean, well, I presume both sides of any political divide.
Absolutely.
Some people are guilty of that.
Absolutely.
Right, on either side. Some people are trying to explore. Some people are. So the really smart ones are quite nuanced in what they're saying, and they're careful what not to say, and they're really popular with transphobic people. But even though they're not saying transphobic things outwardly, right? Like, I mean,
yeah,
it would be bad if a man dressed in a dress raped a woman. Would you not agree? And well, yeah, like I also think that's bad. I don't think you're talking about trans rights anymore, but
exactly.
And the other thing is, it's always couched as, freedom, free speech, libertarianism. So if a university, a liberal campus institution, decides to have a trans bathroom or whatever, right, that's their choice.
Yeah.
But then there's like outrage about that, and you're like, well, but you were just arguing that this is all about freedom. Like that institution wants to do that. Like Facebook wanted to have tampons in its bathroom, on both bathrooms. Like that's up to them, really. It's none of
and
your
it's also
business.
your choice to not use those bathrooms.
Yeah.
Like we've been as a trans person, I've been avoiding using public bathrooms for like I don't know how long in my life. Like I'm terrified of using public bathrooms because I am worried that one day I'll walk into a public bathroom, I'm gonna piss someone off, and they are going to beat me up. And it is an anxiety topic that like a lot of trans people go through.
Yeah, I sympathize, and I'm sorry about that. Getting back to J.K. Rowling then, the big thing that came up, well, no, but expanding it, right?
Yeah.
The big thing that came up was that, oh, this is like the cancel culture left attacking. So when does the left go too far? Like,
right.
Let's find the limits and the edges of that, because sometimes it's fine to shout out. I think, as with everything on Twitter, someone's trying to get likes, and so often I think the conversation, this is just my opinion before I open it up to you, is that someone will say, like, everything that hurts a trans person might lead to trans suicides, and therefore the response doesn't always seem proportional, right? Like, it's one thing to have actual, transphobia, hurting people, cool, I'm out for that. A bathroom not having, a male bathroom not having tampons doesn't seem to be that level of anger inducing, right? There needs to be a scale, which often Twitter arguments don't take into account. Like, how serious is this issue?
So when we're talking about pads and tampons in men's bathrooms, it's often to how do I normalize conversations around not all people who menstruate are women, and not all women menstruate. It's just to just normalize that idea. But there is obviously another step to that, where some people take that as, oh, but that is a personal attack to our manlyhood. And what happens is, the next time they see a trans person, that comes out as that personal attack to their manlyhood or like to their masculinity comes out as harassment and violence, which does happen.
Sort of like white fragility, right? Like if
Right,
you
exactly.
if are you implying that I'm transphobic? That's a nasty thing to say to me. Now
Yeah.
I'm talking about me and how you've hurt my feelings, right? Like,
Exactly.
the
So
idea that there's a war against white males. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's what ends up happening, and that's why we become so busy just trying to say that no, actually that's not what we're saying. All we're saying is this, and
Well, and
the
I think
entire
that's sometimes an
conversation.
intentional. It's called gish gallop, the technique of just throwing
Yeah.
nonsense at a wall and distracting and muddying the waters, right?
Derailing the conversation.
So as I say, if a liberal campus in America wants to do that, that's really up to them. It's actually a bunch of right-wing people who are coming in, trying to cancel that decision, right? Make a lot of noise on Twitter. And then when people defend that, it's like, oh, the left are canceling us. It's like, that's not what's happening here. And I think the right have been very good at framing the left as guilty of cancel culture. It's been really interesting doing my research to find out that there's loads of examples of the right canceling things. The 4chan trolls who complain about YouTube videos, so they demonetize anyone who's left-leaning. The Guardians of the Galaxy director who, like everyone, has some bad tweets in his past, but that was enough to get him fired from Disney. Lindsay Ellis, who's a great YouTuber that does analysis of movies, and she once jokingly tweeted about white genocide sounding like a great weekend activity. Oh, that sounds like fun. There was also I think she was the New York Times editor, an Asian American, who again had once tweeted something ironically about how terrible white people were, and that was enough to get her fired. So there's plenty of examples where this isn't actually a left thing, it's just being framed by the right as we're all about freedom. And the left are trying to cancel this. And when you look into it, you're like, you can find some bad faith people arguing on Twitter, for sure, on both sides. I don't really like this narrative that the left are canceling everybody. And I think the easiest way I've seen it summarized is like, you have freedom of speech, but that freedom comes with consequences. And sometimes everyone's just telling you, you're an asshole and what you just said is wrong.
Exactly. I mean, just the prime example for this is, right, if we're going to talk about, like, you know, the whole Black Lives Matter and the race, the whole race movement, you've got Colin Kaepernick, right? Yeah. Being endorsed by a big brand, and that brand being then canceled by white folks who think it is not okay to kneel, and you know, just things like that.
It's
they're
hilarious, right? The same people that are saying that they shouldn't be protesting now didn't like it when they peacefully and politely protest before.
Yep, exactly.
Have you seen? Yeah, I'll let you finish your thoughts. Sorry.
That's just a thing, right? It comes to a point where if you're not going to listen to us when we're really trying to make you just understand with like the most coolest demeanor, I'm going to raise my voice a little bit because you're not hearing me. Because all I'm seeing is you raising your voice at me. And how far can you push it before I am not okay with it anymore?
Yeah, an interesting take on that is I think H-Bomber guy, who did that fantastic live stream that raised loads of money for mermaids. So we'll segue into that in a second. But his take on it was that pretty much if you look at that whole Nike thing, that was, and again, intentional PR. They knew that the right's cancel culture, right, would work in their favor. They did an analysis and went, this is free press. Sure enough, we're talking about it now still. How many advertising campaigns are we talking about 5 years later, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, there's an argument whether it's capitalism taking advantage of a cause, which, but I think it does more good than damage sometimes. It will get overplayed. But it is, yeah, it's jumping on a social cause to make a profit, knowing that there would be this fragile white backlash of cancelling Nike just because they supported a peaceful protester.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But definitely there is a line when cancel culture in itself goes too far. I guess like a personal experience, like there has been a point where situations that I've been in were over exaggerated, and this is also by other trans people. Like I have been accused of harassing a trans woman. I have been I almost had like a legal harassment case against me. So like these things happen, but
I suppose people do get addicted to the drama of
oh, absolutely.
And when you're always fighting, right? Like sometimes you're fighting in the wrong direction.
Exactly, absolutely. So like these things have happened to me, but at the same time, like I guess the most recent experience was like I had an ex who basically went on social media and told all her followers that I was harassing her, and tagged me in all of the stories. And I, out of because
some people,
I know, right? And because I'm a person who works.
Thankfully, I've never had any drama with any of my exes. So
you are lucky. You are lucky.
I'm joking. I'm lying. You know.
Yeah, I do know
back.
that.
I've had straight up drama.
Yeah, I know. So like, and I'm a person who kind of works with minors too. So I had to come up and put this entire like apology letter online, saying that like yes, my actions weren't nice and things like that.
Did you actually think you owed an apology, or were you just trying to get ahead of the narrative?
I was trying to get ahead of things, but like yes, I did owe an apology because, I mean,
yeah, sure. In a breakup, like, things end badly. You've probably hurt someone.
When you drunk dial your ex a couple times, or more than a couple times, that is an apology owed. When
ideally not publicly, but yeah, sometimes that's how it's got to be.
But another thing that kind of came out from it was that it was publicly then made. It was made public knowledge that I used, and that affected my work. And so, like for me, I have been victimized. No, I'm not gonna say that, but okay. I have been on the receiving end of cancel culture. Definitely. Like I have lost friends over it. I have lost people who I work over it. Like it's horrible.
And it is a real thing. And I think there is a tendency, especially with Twitter as a social media platform, to dredge up something someone said 15 years ago and be like, look at this person, let's get them fired, and cause a big scene.
Right.
And people are just doing it for likes. Mark Ronson does a beautiful piece on it, I don't know if you've seen, saying how, everyone feels like they're punching up because this person's a celebrity. But, the one snowflake doesn't realize it's part of an avalanche pounding down on someone, and it's the 15,000 person to kick them while they're down, right?
Exactly.
There are some tragic examples of people killing themselves because of this horrible lynch mob effect, right? I think we can talk about why the right's positioning of cancel culture is disingenuous, partly because I say there's examples on the right that does it, but for a bit let's just deeper dive on where it has gone too far. So have you had a chance to check out the Contrapoints video?
I did, yes. Were
you familiar with Contrapoints before?
Yes, I was actually. I had watched some of their videos before, but then there was this entire Twitter drama, I believe, where they had taken down all of their videos.
Not their videos, but they removed their Twitter.
Their Twitter.
Closed their Twitter account.
Right. So that was
nice. Thank you. So to summarize the story from my perspective, and as is often the case, you kind of catch it late on Twitter, often not aware unless you're a mega fan what's been going on in the background. I saw people screenshotting Natalie Wynn's more problematic tweets, and one of them, you alluded to it earlier, and I think there's almost a generational thing, which is the point she was making. Some older people, it's just so much about passing that they actually don't want to go around a room and talk about pronouns. They'd rather just not address it. They're happy if they can pass, and they love that, and they don't like being in woke Californian liberal spaces where they have to talk about pronouns all the time. As with lots of things, it actually wasn't about that. If you follow it and when you watch the video, you realize it was because she'd worked with Buck Rogers, who is an early adult trans star, porn star, or adult film, whatever the correct non-offensive terminology is, who'd had some drama in his personal life because his wife had left him for one of the Wachowski sisters?
Siblings.
They both
sisters now, yeah.
Okay, cool. Not at the time, and so he outed her.
Lily. Lily or Lana?
I don't know.
One of them. It was one of them.
Yeah. But the point is, like, the train of, because you worked with this person who did this thing to that person 15 years ago, now everyone has to cancel. Now I'm combing through her tweets and I found a few problematic things, and then it just became this huge big shit show. And then they were contacting Contrapoints friends on YouTube, famous left tubers like Philosophy Tube, and saying, oh, it's really unfortunate that you're prepared to work with Natalie Wynn. It'd be a shame if we had to cancel you next. So I find it a bit disingenuous when people on the left be like, oh, cancel culture isn't a thing. It's just people getting feedback and their comeuppance. Like, clearly, sometimes the mob goes too far.
No, definitely. Sometimes they definitely go too far. I think the easiest way to explain it is, I grew up in a very, very transphobic environment and in a very transphobic family. I grew up being transphobic. But here I am unlearning all of those prejudices, unlearned every single transphobic thing that I ever knew, realizing that came from internal transphobia, and then coming out as trans myself.
But this is the thing, though. You can't be an activist for the world to be a better place if you, like, don't accept that learning needs to happen and views need to change. And if your attitude is, you said something wrong 10 years ago, it's like, yeah, like we're all learning. There needs to be a way of just apologizing and accepting that. And I think that these people, so sad because they're just trying to get a like on Twitter. Aggressive.
There are certain things that I'm not scared to admit, because I know that I've grown so much since that happened, that I'm a totally different person now. And the fact that I am using any of the privilege that I do have to help marginalized communities. And that's what's important. Like, for me, at least. Like, for example, like, I don't know how many brown people I know who constantly drop the N-word. As a kid, when I was like 13, 14, I've done it. Like, I've dropped the N-word.
I don't know anyone who was into hip-hop in their teens 10 years ago who wasn't occasionally saying it amongst their friends. You know, you'd look around, check before you said it.
It came to a point, especially with us brown folks, where we wouldn't even check, because it didn't feel wrong for us to say. But that's how we were brought up.
I think one of the highlights of my life is when, during a battle rap my friend was having with someone else at this house party, he referred to me as his N-word, and oh god, it's the best thing that's ever happened to me.
No, yeah, but what I was coming from that is like, I have done that before, and now I am literally a full-time advocate, and I correct people, or even make them question why they actually use the N-word. Like, I am the person who I've gone from using the word to saying, no, that's not okay to use.
Yeah, and I think that
as a brown person.
Yeah, that's the magic, isn't it? Like, it's not always possible. I forgive people for being frustrated, as you say, raising their voice. But ultimately, you know, the most effective thing to do, and we don't always need to be maximum effective all the time, but the most effective thing to do is politely, calmly, empathetically try and explain. That doesn't always happen. So I think that's the thing. Like, we're not saying cancel culture isn't a thing, although for some reason some people are. I don't know why the left is now denying its existence when
it definitely exists.
Yeah. And it is toxic, and it is the least persuasive, you know, way to communicate, right? Like, again, you know, finding out a public official is a member of the Nazi party, the research journalists did, finding out that a bunch of police officers in the United States were members of Nazi organizations, right? Like, that's the kind of good cancel culture we can all get behind. So
right, exactly.
Yeah.
There is a massive difference between if someone did something 10 years ago when they were 13, 14, and when someone did something 6 months ago and now they're saying they've completely changed.
Yeah.
Huge difference between that. And if someone was like 25, 26 when they did that is also a pretty good reflection of who they were.
I was genuinely concerned that Natalie Wynn would shift to the right, as a few people have, when they've been cancelled so hard by the left. They sort of, you know, they feel renounced and alone. But the great thing she does in that video is say how, to be honest, this has happened to her a few times. Like, she's been, you know, doxxed and by Nazis. Like, the start of her show was making fun of Nazis on YouTube. So she's used to it. She didn't expect support, and so she was able to handle it and write that great piece on it. Not everyone's as nuanced in their understanding, obviously.
No.
And can be as forgiving or sympathetic. But yeah, I think, you know, I don't even think that these cancel culture Twitter mobs are, you know, the argument is, oh, they're well intentioned. I don't even think it's that. I think often they're just making a drama, kicking a fight, and trying to get some likes, and it's not really an issue that's actually that important to the people they claim to be defending.
Right. Sometimes it is. I think, in my perspective, because when you're, for example, someone gets sexually assaulted, they cancel the rapist.
Yeah.
By all means. You know, like, by all means, like, I can stand behind. Someone digging out what someone said when they were 12 and then using it when that said person is now 27. That I can't get behind.
Yeah.
Because that is when it goes kind of too far. Because as kids, or as young people, we don't know what we're talking about, especially when we're 12.
And I think often the case is, you know, people are like scared to lose their jobs. And there is a problem there, right? Like, if you tweeted something problematic 6 years ago and you got fired, especially if you're a journalist or a comedian or, like, you know.
Yeah.
I actually do sympathize with, you know, people that have lost their jobs, even if they said something wrong. We're all learning. And I think especially if you're a comedian, I think, well, firstly, it's your job to talk about interesting things, which are often controversial. Also, as you know, because I know you've done some stand-up comedy, it's trial and error, right? You're always trying things out,
Right.
and there's a difference between here are my sincerely held beliefs versus like, oh shit, I forgot that bit. I think it was, and like skidding on it at the time, right? So it's easy to say something that if you're then forever held accountable for, makes it tough to talk for a living, right? Let's get into Dave Chapelle.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I guess before jumping into Dave Chapelle specifically, I think one of the things with comedy is there is a way of, wait, hang on, what have I done? Okay, no, I've done nothing. Wait, sorry, give me 1 second. Yeah, it's all good. So one of the things that I think with comedy is there is a way of saying it. There's a way of not seeming offensive when you're talking about trans identities, especially. Often what happens is when cis straight men, especially, or cis men, just in general, whether they're straight or not, and even in the gay community, there is a massive issue about transphobia. A lot of these jokes are taken by transphobic cis men and then used against trans people.
Right. Yeah, that was my main take on it, is that if you actually listen back, because I did in preparation for this podcast, I watched it again. And it's funny because if, like I said earlier with the right-wing guys who are very clever at not saying a transphobic thing, if you actually listen back, there are some problematic things which I'll go into. But yeah, I can definitely imagine how someone that likes Dave Chapelle and transphobia can take that as a green card, and you know, like some of the comedy events you were going to, the open mics, I can imagine a much less intelligent version of that coming across on stage, which is actively transphobic. So for those that don't know Shane, somewhat famous in the Bangkok comedy scene for heckling at certain events when transphobic comments are made by stand-up comics. Is that a fair summary?
No, it's great, because I think one of the things that I actively look out for in comedy shows is because I know most of these comedians, right? I know their intentions behind it too sometimes, and when they usually come out on stage and they're constantly dropping offensive names when they're referring to trans folks, even though, you know, yes, those some words can be reclaimed by the community, yes, but not all trans women like to be called a certain L word.
As you can imagine, in Bangkok, an amateur comedian, the obvious target would be yes, the local trans people
Community.
So you consider that word like a slur that shouldn't be said?
If it's not reclaimed by the certain trans women who is being talked about, I think it should be avoided. And a lot of trans women do actually say that they want to avoid using that word if they don't identify with that.
Okay. Right. So you hear them saying that, making jokes at those people's expenses. In comedic terms, it's called punching down, right? Like.
Exactly. But what also happens is...
And what, you actually stand up and actively heckle while they're talking?
Oh, God, no. Like, I'll wait. Like, I'll actually wait till they're done. And then I will, like, confront them about it later. Like, I understand.
I was my impression from the Facebook arguments I saw that you were actually interrupting performances.
Oh, God, no. I actually have a lot of respect for people who get on stage and are sharing the same platform and the mic with me. And, you know, it's scary being up there. And it's scary to not have people laugh at your jokes. I totally, like, I have so much, like, I sympathize with that so much, because I've been there as a trans comedian myself. So I don't want anyone else to feel that way too. But there is a situation where I can't go to comedy shows when people in my community are being literally the punchline of jokes, not in a respectful way, while two of my friends who are trans women were harassed in front of a very popular bar where when a lot of my trans women friends and trans men friends and non-binary friends are being denied entry from a lot of places, and things like that does happen. And one of the reasons why things like that happens is because there is this stigma around trans women, and that's why they are not allowed in some of the bars and clubs. And
Right.
comedians then taking that stigma, making that into a joke, is normalizing that.
Yeah.
So that's what my issue is with it. If you're making a respectful joke about the trans community, by all means, I will laugh with you. Like, I don't know how many times I've made a joke about me tripping over my own penis. That is something that, like, I can laugh at, and that is something a lot of trans people can laugh at because it's something that is so normal to us.
I
And
mean,
that's something
and
we
you
go
know,
through.
just me being the size I am, I can relate to that problem as well.
Exactly. Exactly. Uh, smooth. Smoothly just put that in.
This episode
Don't
sponsored
edit
by
that out.
Chris's penis.
And a lot of beers. No, it's
Not enough
great,
beers,
but
please.
no, but things like that, like, so that's why it frustrates me so much, because you make these, like, there are comedians who make these jokes not understanding the severity of where these jokes actually take it, of trans women actually being harassed, being murdered sometimes because it's just men in dresses anyway, so I can beat up a trans woman. And
Well, yeah, there's this whole trans people as a trap, right? Like, and people
right,
having sex with a trans sex worker, but if their friends find out, or after
exactly,
the guy's finished, he's no longer excited, but like, oh my god, what I just did is gay, and because of
exactly,
toxic masculinity and homophobia,
exactly.
can't allow himself to deal with it.
And there's another thing called panic defense, which is a very, very real thing. The panic defense basically is if a person was to find out that they had slept, or like they had taken home a trans woman or a trans person, they can plead the panic defense for
Yes, yeah,
murdering said trans
in
person.
in some states in America, right? Like, it is
Yeah, exactly.
is a valid defense for reducing a murder charge down to manslaughter.
Exactly. And that is something that, like, so that is something that just totally baffles me. So when I hear people making jokes, yes, it hits hard because those are the same jokes that were used against me when I was in high school and when I was getting bullied.
Yeah, I think the problem is, though, that sometimes some people, and part of the cancel culture thing, right? Like, as I said before,
Yeah.
equate a joke with suicide, murder, rape, and
Yeah,
you're
no.
like, okay, you're bridging a big gap there. You're connecting a lot of dots, right? And the person's like, but this is a joke. Isn't your response disproportionate to the fact that I just
Mm.
told a silly joke?
So basically what
Like,
happens
don't
in
blame
that
me for murder
situation,
and suicide, in effect, right?
right? What happens in those situations is, yes, you can call them out for it. Yes, you can call them out for making a distasteful joke. And that's what I do. I call them out, I confront them for it. And that's when things change, because that's when people get so defensive and they're like, oh, it's just a joke.
Right.
But
Yeah, that's what people miss, right?
right,
You don't stand up on stage, interrupt their mid thing, and say
no,
you're responsible for murder and suicide. Some
yeah,
do,
no,
and there are YouTube videos of the triggerly puffs or whatever, right? But actually,
right,
what is more likely to happen is a conversation where you go, "No, that's not cool, man," and they go, "Yeah, it is," and you're like, "Okay, but here's why it's not cool."
exactly,
Not everyone goes from 0 to 100 immediately in that
exactly,
conversation. Often, like
and
you say it quietly, you say it calmly. If they don't listen, then the conversation escalates.
exactly. One of the prime examples being, I was in a group with a bunch of other stand-up comedians, and that word, the offensive word was used, and I had said, you know, since you do have trans people in this group, I think it's probably a good idea to not use that word. And it was totally dismissed as, oh, this is Thailand. And then I had actually explained why it was offensive, and why, like, not all trans women actually like being called that word, um, and it can be deemed offensive. Um, and I just said it can be deemed offensive, so I wasn't even talking for the entire community. I had just basically said let's avoid using that word, uh, and then it became this whole where the admin of the group had taken that post down and then replaced it with something that went along the lines of men, women, tomboys, and blah blah blah, and like multiple different words, and like whoever you are. And then that's kind of like, okay, now I see what you're trying to do. Now you're just trying to push my buttons.
Why was that not them responding to the negative feedback? Like they took
That
away
was
the
them.
negative word, right?
No, they used the negative word again.
Oh, and then the whoever you are is sort of like and all the nonsense. Yeah, like people that get
Exactly.
angry with, oh, what pronoun do I have to use now?
Yeah, exactly. So it's just one of those things, and I was like, oh, so you're just trying to push my buttons now, and so I just left the group. And then ever since then, I just haven't been actively going to stand-up comedy shows and performing in them. And I made a public post about it, about how I refuse to not only share a stage with people who do not sympathize with our struggles, but also at the same time, um, make a marginalized community the butt of the jokes, and it is harmful to us, because yes, they might not do it with the idea of being transphobic, but they are normalizing the fact that other people can make jokes about us.
Okay. But
So
so
if a
in
trans
fact, you are asking them to cancel any speakers who make transphobic jokes.
n- no,
Or you've just found them so toxic and unwilling to listen that you're tired and done with it, and you're like, "Oh, I'm
at
not
this point I'm
improving
just
things here."
tired and done with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, at this point I'm just tired and done with it. I'm not saying uh cancel transphobic comedians. All I'm saying is
You weren't listened to or supported at all. And this is it. Like,
exactly.
if the argument is free marketplace of ideas, freedom of speech, and I'm surprised how little they listen to. That could be a learning opportunity, right? Like
Right. Like for me it's all
it would be
about
a better joke than just like
exactly.
right,
Yeah,
like
boner at
butt
the
of
dinner
joke.
table.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like that's something that I hear from literally every single comedian in Bangkok. Boner at the dinner table. My girlfriend had a boner at the dinner table, and it's so funny because I'm just like, okay, so you're okay with talking about other people's genitalia, but the moment I go on stage and I talk about your genitalia, suddenly you have a problem.
I was surprised in preparation for this podcast. I thought back, and I hadn't realized how common transphobia is until I went back through my memories. And the funny thing is, I had not purged it from my memory, but avoided thinking about it and not told anyone, which is, how a memory doesn't become stronger, right? You just forget about it, put it
Yeah.
back in mind. But the 2 times I've slept with a trans person, both times I've lost friends over it. And I didn't, in my head, I just didn't, as I say, I've already thinking about it, so I didn't connect that that's what it was about, and what would happen was, oh my God, that was flagrant transphobia. But yeah, the first time I slept with a trans person, I don't think my business partner ever spoke to me again. Like when I told him that, it was like, he judged me and said it was disgusting and I'm a mess and need to stop drinking, and then never really talked to me after that. Now, there were other factors, but that seemed to be the nail in the coffin. And I never thought, oh my God, that's massively homophobic. I can't believe that just fucking happened. I was like, just embarrassed and felt, concerned that I was gay, and so avoided thinking about it. And the second time, literally, it was a couple. He was Canadian, his wife was Thai, and they were my housemates. And I one night brought a trans person home, and the next day, while at work, she packed my bags in my suitcases and was like, "Get out! Like you can't do that." Bringing her home, like she's stealing our stuff. She could have stolen our stuff, and she's probably addicted to drugs and da 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 da. So, and at the time I was like, oh, that sucks. She's a bitch. But in hindsight, it's even from a Thai person, massive transphobia.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was, like, I tell you what's remarkable to me is that I don't think I've even told you these stories before, and we've known each other for years. So. I didn't think about it until I was preparing for this episode. And then I didn't want to talk about it on the recording. I'm like, well, that's transphobic. The fact that I'm ashamed to admit that I've slept with a trans person. Oh my God. Like, wow. That's why I say it's the problem with claiming that trans people are trying to shut the conversation down. Actually, it works both ways. Like a lot of people are trying to shut this conversation down because of homophobia, transphobia. It's been enlightening to go through that in my head.
Also, a lot of times what people don't understand is sometimes we're just tired. Like we literally have to defend our identities every single day, with every single part of our lives.
Yeah.
Every time
if
we take
I criticize
our
cancel culture, it's like, dude, this is it's the problem with people playing devil's advocate, right? Like, I think, as Mareng said beautifully on the last episode, people forget when they're playing devil's advocate who you're representing. You are representing the devil's opinion. And it's very easy for someone to do as an academic thought experiment. The other person finds it quite annoying, frustrating, exhausting. Like,
exactly. And it's okay for someone to play the devil's advocate. It is okay for you to question things. It is okay for cis white men and cis heterosexual people to question things about trans identities. But there is a certain way of doing that. There is a way of saying, yeah, but if you have a penis, you're a man, right? Versus, okay, I don't entirely understand. Would you be open to have a conversation with me?
You're right. So they say they're playing devil's advocate, but they're actually not the Aristotle philosophizing questioning that they think they are. Very often they're like, oh no, I'm just playing devil's advocate, but I'm going to say no to everything you say and not listen or learn from any of it. You're like, that's not the reason you play devil's advocate, is to explore and learn a different viewpoint. But if all you're doing is being like, yeah, but no, oh no, it's okay, I'm just playing devil's advocate, like, you're not. You're just, that's the defense, the card you pull out to be like, oh no, like, these aren't my opinions, they're the devil's, which I keep advocating for.
Yeah, exactly. That's where it gets exhausting. That's where we're able to kind of differentiate between allies and people who are actually willing to listen and learn, and people who just don't want to and are going to keep being ignorant. Because I get it, like, for me, it's all about discussion. It's all about let's question your ignorance, because I have been ignorant. I think everyone is ignorant. But are you able to question that enough, like question your offensive thoughts enough to make it safer for other people? That's where ignorant people become allies, and I don't think that's what people understand.
Yeah, let's drill down then on the example of Dave Chapelle, right? So first question,
Right.
Is he cancelled?
Oh,
You're
a
the
little
judge,
bit.
jury, and executioner. So
a little bit.
Did you watch all of his Netflix specials?
I did, yes. So
were you a fan before? But before the Netflix specials.
yes, I was. Not gonna lie, Dave Chapelle is an incredible comedian. I think he is able to articulate a lot of things that he says very, very, very well. And his jokes are definitely on point.
I think that's why it's frustrating. Counter to what I said earlier, where someone doing a Dave Chapelle impression and aping transphobic statements is frustrating because they're not smart, they don't have nuance, and they don't have good intentions. But Dave Chapelle actually is the other way. He is so smart. Everything he says is so well thought through that when he says a bad thing, it hurts all the more. You're like, you spent 6 months thinking about that, and that's what you came out with. So yeah, watching it back was interesting, especially knowing I was doing it, researching this episode. So I think as he says on the episode, it was very hard for him hearing about Bill Cosby, who's his hero, right? And hearing criticism of Bill Cosby, because Bill Cosby was a great man, and so he didn't want to believe the bad things. I had a similar experience with Louis C.K., best comedian. I love him as a person, and then finding out about all the horrible things he did, you're like, oh no, you don't want to believe it. It's like your hero. It's like, as Dave Chapelle jokes, it's like finding out that chocolate ice cream has done horrible things. You don't want to hear it. So I've been knee-jerk against criticism of Dave Chapelle from the start. Watching it back, I think there's a few levels of understanding. One, he definitely says some bad things. And again, I personally don't want to cancel him. I was crying laughing watching it. But then also, it can also be true that he could have worded that better. Right,
exactly.
So he does outright refer to a tranny. Sorry if that's an offensive term, but I think in this case it's important to just be clear exactly what he said, because I'm quoting it. So please forgive that. A tranny, a man with a dick in a dress. Right, and I think that's like level one. Is that, could he have reworded that? I do sympathize that if you look, for example, at most of his other routines, he drops the N-word a lot. It's offensive. He makes rape jokes. They're offensive. So sometimes it feels like, I don't want to be that, apply that lens of a trans thing to everything. The thought police, does everything have to comply with these guidelines, right? Over to you, because I've got a lot to say on this, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Okay, so one of the things that he also says is he compares I think what he compares being trans to if I was to say that I'm Chinese.
Yes.
Like identify. Yeah.
If I put on a polo shirt, that doesn't make me white, and I can't demand people call me by a white name, right?
Exactly. So it's like things like that. I think that the issue with what he said wasn't that he made a trans joke. the issue with what he said was dismissing the fact that trans identities are real, but also comparing that to something that as uh, uh, small as a shirt that can be taken off. So it's almost comparing that to a mask or a outfit that can be taken off, which basically dismisses everything about trans identities, which is exactly what J.K. Rowling does, which is exactly what other comedians also do. It's this idea, and that's why a lot of trans folks have problem with trans characters not being played by trans actors, which I think we will go into detail later. But it's that thing. It's the idea of being able to take that off.
And as I say, for a comedian as smart as Dave Chapelle, who you can tell has overthought everything to the 11th dimension, it's not an unfair reading. You're not reading too much into it. He was making that point. There is, though, like from our perspective as a listener, right, I think there's a few dimensions that he's intentionally going through. And he does actually, on his second special, make it clear that as an individual, right, I was really positive about Caitlyn Jenner coming out and how positively the media received it and America in general, even though they might not understand it, they accepted it. And that's massively beneficial. As an African American, bunch of funny transphobic shit. And I think on like a second level analysis, not a shallow reading of what he's saying, is that it's being honest. Like, it's not funny for him to say this, but what he's saying is, being honest, I have transphobic thoughts, and here they are.
Yeah.
Like, and that is a generous interpretation, but again, like, Dave Chapelle is smart enough that I actually think that's a fair reading. He is, I think, especially, and this often happens, right? Like with hip hop, for example, very poor African American people rarely share woke, middle class, college educated values. And that's because, if you haven't had the luxury and privilege of a university education, like often you don't have these progressive thoughts. Right. You're not reading the Huffington Post and da-da-da. So I do think a more generous reading of what he's saying is, I have these transphobic thoughts. I know they're wrong, but I do. I actually think I could make that case for why you shouldn't cancel Dave Chapelle.
Right. So it's difficult because not that I agree with cancel culture, but the difficult part of it is, if he's not called out, and if those jokes are then translated into actions or into other people then using those jokes and saying, well, if Dave Chapelle can say it, why can't I?
Yeah.
That's when
you don't get it and you're not as smart as Dave Chapelle and you're not as funny. So shut the fuck up. Yeah. And I think that's actually a valid point, that and this is what I know happens, is like, and it's actually frustrating that then in his latest special, he's so against the furore he caused. Because I'm like, no, that's the good thing. You promoted a conversation. Like, it's maybe proof that I'm giving him too generous a reading, because I love him and I want to. But the actual, okay, there are some people looking to cancel him and stop him getting hired. And that's, I would say that's too much. But I'll ask you, like, what do you think?
I don't know. For me,
I think it's okay to have a conversation about it and criticize.
Right.
Like,
for me, I think I think if he realizes that it hurts a community and he continues doing it the way he does it, I think it's pretty fair to hold him accountable for his actions.
Yeah. So have you watched his the specials after that? Did you continue to watch him?
No.
Right. So I will say that he's clearly read the tweets, and it progresses, and it does become more nuanced. So as I say,
Okay.
the Caitlyn Jenner thing comes from the second one, where he's like, as an individual, I'm really proud of America for not fucking that up. As an African American, these are the misgivings I have about it. I think it got more and more nuanced. And in the end, he's like, you know, I have to be fucking careful what I say because there's people in the audience who want to cancel the fuck out of me. I do think he goes on a progression and does learn. So that's why I think the conversation's a good thing. Like, it's okay for him to have said the wrong thing, get feedback, listen and learn. As you say, I'm not necessarily sure his audience does.
No, yeah, absolutely. I think if he's not able to kind of learn from that and kind of correct,
then you have a problem.
Then I have a problem. And that's not just Dave Chapelle. Yeah. That's anyone.
Okay, well, I will recommend you watch his other specials. And
I will.
That transition. There will be more problematic things. Yeah, I won't quote a joke. There's nothing worse than someone trying to quote Dave Chappelle's joke terribly. But yes, I think he goes on that transition, learns, and gets more subtle and nuanced. So I would recommend it for that.
See, that's definitely something that I do like to see, that people do learn from the things that they say, and they do listen to the communities that they hurt. And I think that's very important, because if we are not going to tell you that we are hurt, who else will?
Yeah, and I think learning is the key thing. I think that's also why often this argument becomes divided on an age line, like so many things, right? Like trying to explain it to a boomer. And it's interesting because I think even like Buck Rogers, older trans people even aren't integrating well in woke spaces.
No.
And I think that's tough though, because they did fight. They had to do the first fight, right? They fought a lot of prejudice. Yeah. They might not always say the right thing, but dude, like in their day, like how far we've come, I think people often forget that. And the funny thing I find is like the idea of TERFs, right? Not inviting trans people to their meetings. In my experience, the average TERF would be 60 years old, and a young trans person wouldn't want to go to their meetup, right?
No. So the problem is that yes, there are TERFs who are 60 years old, but there are also younger TERFs, and that's the problem that we have. Things like things like genitalia equals gender identity, which is not right at all. TERFs usually stand by that, so they include transgender men into their feminism, because they were born women, and they treat transgender men as women, because transgender men still have a vagina and still have certain chromosomes, but they don't include trans women in that conversation. That's why they are named TERFs, excluding trans women from women's spaces and including trans men in women's spaces, when that's not who trans men are. When it comes to older transgender people and younger activists, there is a massive divide, and I'm not even going to deny that, because there is that disagreement with how certain fights happen. As a young trans activist, I appreciate and I admire every single trans activist that came before me. I appreciate their fight, and I admire their courage, and I absolutely love the fact that they've put their all into the fight. The issue now is a lot of older transgender folks often forget that identities do evolve. Non-binary identities do exist, asexual identities do exist, aromantic identities exist. And dismissing that, like dismissing our fight, like young activist fight, when we are respecting their fight, that's where the divide comes in. Because we're giving them the respect, but we're not getting the same respect that we're giving. Does that make sense?
It does. It's just a problem I'm seeing across the board. That classically, my dad, love him, have always looked up to him, and this year have decided I can't talk politics with him anymore. We used to even like debating, even though we disagreed. He would listen, I would listen, and I don't think that's happening anymore. And I do think just biologically, the brain at a certain age is no longer elastic and is not open to new ideas. And it's like, sorry, but I learned this in high school and it's common sense, and fuck off with your idea.
Yeah.
And I know that's ageist as fuck, but it is a common observation from many, many people that if you stop listening to Radio 1 in the UK, so the pop charts, right? It's true, at a certain age, you just can't listen to it. You're not interested in hearing new music or new opinions.
Yeah.
Especially when it's, you know, counters your own beliefs and implies that maybe some of your opinions are sexist or racist. No one wants to hear that. Obviously,
exactly. Which is where one of the trans woman who actually accused me of harassing her. This is where it all stemmed from. We had a disagreement because she was saying this is not how us Gen Xers do it, and I'm like, well, fine, but like you can't dismiss our fight, and that was a disagreement. And she was like, yeah, so everything that people have been calling me racist is true then. I'm like, well, if people of color are calling you a racist, maybe that is something that maybe you should look at.
Well, like Sam Harris, who used to be my hero for a long time, has gone on a 9-year meltdown because, you know, a couple of people called him racist once. Rather than acknowledge that, you know, blaming black people for being arrested because they're criminals, it might be a little bit racist and unnuanced and understanding. As smart as he is, he just couldn't handle being called racist so hard that he's gone the other way, and he's like now interviewing people that say, oh, well, it's just because black people have low IQs, they deserve what happens.
Right.
So it's sad to see, especially when there is so much learning that could happen. Yeah, I think the funny thing is, you know, as you say, if you keep having the conversation, it's nice to see the progress. And I do appreciate, as we've said, sometimes you're not feeling it, you don't want to keep fighting, it's okay to walk away. But everyone does what they can to advance the cause a little bit.
Yeah.
And you definitely do see some progress. I think the mermaids charity case is an interesting one that kind of perfectly succinctly summarizes this whole debate. So firstly, the reason H Bomber Guy started a live stream to raise money was because Right Wing tried to cancel a donation from the National Lottery to the Mermaids Foundation. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Mermaids raises money for trans kids, right?
Yeah, trans youth, yeah.
Right. And so the right's reaction to it was, oh my God, they're trying to mutilate the genitals of children, which is a bad idea. And so because it was cancelled, he raised this, he started this thing, and made it very funny. It was all about fuck this right-wing guy who's actually a comedian who was trying to cancel this donation to this charity. It's the writer of, I don't know if you've seen Father Ted, but
No, I haven't.
An old Irish comedy from about 20 years
Okay.
ago. The writer for that was furious and used his power and influence to stop this money going to this charity. And I got to be honest, like a couple of years ago when I heard, Jordan Peterson and people like that make the argument that it's not a good idea for children to be given hormones and have their genitals mutilated. Yeah, that does sound a concerning thing. So yeah, talk me through that. Like, at what age is it reasonable? Because it's in some cases an irreversible decision, right?
Right. So
At
lot
what
of
age
the
is
things
it
that I
reasonable
think.
to start on the gender reassignment thing?
So I think it's difficult to say that because a lot of us kind of know our gender when we're quite young. Usually when we hit puberty. That is when we kind of start realizing that something's not right or something's wrong. Yes, there has been and I'm saying this outright because yes, there has been cases where trans folks have regretted transitioning, and often that is because they didn't like what a certain hormone did to their body, because they didn't want like a certain effect on their body, and that's why they stopped.
There's like famous cases of a male to female YouTuber who then decided she wanted to have kids, but you can't because
Exactly. But what happens with younger people or kids, since we're talking about that, is it's not really hormones that they're being given. People often think that it is, but it's actually hormone blockers.
Right.
So it's not really like they're transitioning, that transition is starting. It's more
They're delaying the onset of puberty, right?
Exactly. Till the child makes their decision.
I mean, as you said at the start, right? When you understand how difficult, traumatic transitioning is, it shows that it's, not, as the right would characterize it, frivolously being done, right? It's not a day clinic to have your penis chopped off.
And here's the thing, like, you can't just go in and just be like, all right, I want to start hormones now. It's not that easy as a lot of people think it is. If you're a minor, you have to make sure your parents know about it, things like that, like your parents' consent, all of that. But also you need a psychiatrist's note, stating that
in England, at least,
everything,
a gender reassignment certificate. Yeah.
Exactly, and that is even before starting hormones. So
it is like people having this conversation, concerned about kids, concerned it might be wrong. Is that a transphobic opinion to voice?
Concerned that kids might be wrong. Again, there's so many levels to that, but it's really difficult to say if it's transphobic if you don't know the context behind why they're saying that. If they're saying that just to make a point that like trans people should not
therefore
transition,
no one should do it. Yeah.
Exactly. But if their genuine concern is okay, maybe this child might regret their decisions later,
or isn't psychologically capable of making the decision.
Right.
those concerns
But
have already been addressed. There are procedures in place, and if you do your
exactly,
research, you find
exactly, you'll actually know that those procedures are already in place. Which brings me to the fact that there are a lot of people who, when a trans child says that they think that they're trans, a lot of people are like, no, but it can't be because you're too young. There is no age in knowing what your gender is. If you, as a cisgender person, can know that you are a boy and you were assigned male at birth, then a trans kid can also know what their gender is, and if it is not accurate
and
to
a
that
lot of it
assigned at
smacks
birth.
of the arguments I used to hear a lot, but not so much about homosexuality. Like, oh, but you're young, you don't know. Like, it's just a phase.
So how do
right?
you know you're straight?
And you're like, if you really think that being straight is a choice that you've made, like, you want to try being gay for a bit? No, you don't. I knew from a very young age that I loved boobies. Like, that was just very clear to me. So
exactly. And what ends up happening with these situations is when you bring, like, when they tell trans kids that, you know, it, they're too young to make that decision they're too young to make the decision of whether they're trans or not. You're basically dismissing their entire discovery of themselves, and that leads to mental health difficulties, that leads to um, them hiding so deep in the closet that they suffocate themselves. And that is where young trans folks actually could be pushed to self-harm and suicide. And this is a thing, this is a legit thing. As a young trans person, when my identities were dismissed, when I was like 12, 13, I thought that there was something incredibly wrong with me. And I did go to, I did find an escape in self-harm and almost even in suicide. So this, I'm talking all from personal experience, and I'm talking from the stories that I've heard other trans people share with me. But of course, there is that thing where it might not be safe for a child to transition at that time because of how much their bodies can take. And that's a totally different conversation.
And it's a conversation to be had between them and their doctor.
Exactly. Between them and their medical professional, and not between them and someone who knows nothing about adolescents and pediatric care.
Right. And in the case of what's her face, she who must not be named.
That's perfect. Yeah, it's perfect.
It doesn't feel that she's trying to learn, and it does feel like she's, with half truths, intentionally misrepresenting the opinion, which is why she got such negative.
Right. So, like I said before, I admire her so much. And it really hurts when your hero basically destroys everything that you've ever wanted to kind of like stick with. Like, I almost got a Harry Potter tattoo, and now I don't want it anymore.
Yeah, but I bet plenty of people do, though, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's that thing, right? Because now everyone's like, yeah, but if she can say it, why can't I? Because she has presented everything in such a persuasive
it's a
way.
well-stated case.
It's
like
very well articulated.
I'm trying to protect women from rape. Are you against me? You're like, oh no,
exactly.
I didn't realize I was on the side of the rapist. Shit.
And that's where it comes. That's where communication differences and semantics come forward, right? How you say certain things and how are you able to twist something to feed your narrative?
And like I say, if you rephrase it as, oh, these blacks are looking to rape our women, right? Our
Right.
gay men just want to rape young boys. That's why they're asking
Exactly.
for rights. It's a
Exactly.
continuation of that logic, and it's quite easy to disprove. And it's quite understandable why it got such a negative kickback. And it's not a sign
Exactly.
that the left is trying to destroy society and legitimate conversation. Although no doubt there were idiots on Twitter who were helping the cause. That'll always happen.
Right, for sure. There are always bad fruits in the basket, right? What I was gonna say is like Jamie Dodger, the video that I shared with you. He's a trans guy, and he made a wonderful 1 hour long video about why J.K. Rowling's letter was so horrible. And I definitely recommend if this is a topic that people are interested in, to go watch that video, because Jamie, like when I was growing up, while he was transitioning, he used to do voice books, like what do you call them? Audiobooks. He used to read Harry Potter, and I used to listen to him.
Wow.
And now he's made a 1 hour long video saying how it hurts, because and he presents it so beautifully and so well, like
succinctly,
articulated,
precisely, point by point. Here's why she's wrong. Here's evidence. Here's data. Here's examples where she's quoting a badly sourced study. Like if you're genuinely interested in the truth and open debate, you'll actually find it more from a video like that than J.K. Rowling and a lot of the other people that published that letter about how we're all about free speech and debate and we're being shut down. Yeah, okay. Well, I think that's a beautiful point as any to wrap things up. Would you like to say the Marsha P. Johnson quote, or shall
I? Did you put it in there?
Yeah, man.
Oh yeah, you did. You can say it if you want. What you want?
Give it a go, man. History isn't something you look back at and say it was inevitable. It happens because people make decisions that are sometimes very impulsive and of the moment, but those moments are cumulative realities. I may be crazy, but that don't make me wrong.
Marsha B. Johnson is the reason why Pride is celebrated around the world. So, so she's incredible.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Shane, thank you so much.
Of course, and if you wanna look at her documentary, there's actually a documentary about Marsha P. Johnson on Netflix, The Life and Death of Marsha P. Johnson, and it is absolutely beautiful.
Super, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to plug and promote? I know you have your own streaming platform and Patreon.
Oh yeah, so I stream for Therapy Funds every month, and that's on Insanely Shane streams on
Link
Facebook.
Below. Yeah.
I will send you the link. But that's what I do. I struggle with a bunch of mental illnesses like PTSD and complex PTSD and anxiety and stuff. So I need to go to therapy every month, and that's one of the things that I do. But apart from that, I also help young trans folks when they really, really need help, whether it's for therapy, whether it's for hormones. Like just recently, there has been a shortage of testosterone in Thailand, and two of my friends were transgender. I know, right?
Such a bad joke. I'm sorry.
I know, and each it's getting really expensive. So we've decided to the boys and I at the Holy Tranity. It's a podcast by trans folks for trans folks. So it's basically just a rant. So the three guys.
You're being far too modest. It's a very good podcast. I really.
Okay, cool. So the three guys who are behind that, me, Riddy, and Parker's, we decided to buy testosterone before the prices hike, so that we can share it with other trans guys who cannot afford it.
Like Dallas Buyers Club.
Yeah, exactly.
Bangkok Buyers
So
Club. Cool.
that's what we're doing.
That's really awesome. Well, yeah, please, guys, check out Shane's stuff. He's hilarious, and yeah, definitely worth following. If you can't donate to Patreons, I know not everyone's in a position to do that. Please like, subscribe, review, and share, because that really does help people, and it costs nothing.
Absolutely.
Shane, I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you did.
Yeah, me too.
Awesome, man. Well, thank
That
you
was
so
great.
much. I've waited
Thank
2 years to have this with you.
I know, right? It's been a very, very long time.
Yeah, but definitely worth it. And I'm glad, actually, because I wasn't ready for this before. I've been, doing a fair amount of soul searching, reading, researching. But this was exactly the nuanced, honest, and open conversation I wanted.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And this is a conversation that people can have if they're willing to listen.
Yeah, like I say,
That's it.
It's actually, for every idiot arguing, there are people who are surprisingly willing to discuss, debate, share statistics, studies. Like if you really want to play devil's advocate and actually learn, like that option is available to you. You won't get cancelled for asking questions. It's okay.
Exactly.
All right, brilliant. Thank you so much, Shane. Take care.
Of course, you too.
All the best. Cheers, man.
And as a special treat for anyone that's made it this far through the podcast, we have the beautiful music of Zimone. Links to her music, Instagram, Facebook below. Enjoy this. It's called Welcome to My World.
Hey, welcome to my world. Let's go. Baby, I'm back. Yeah, I'm ready to roll. Now you shut the fuck up and listen to my flow. This is what you're waiting for. Don't compare me with you, bro. I'm a legend of new generation. All my bitches, set your hand on fire. Cause every time I do rap, make you feel more higher. Until the motherfucker we have signed SOS. That I suck all so shitty, I'm gonna start my magic spell. Call me Simone, my ends just at this phone. Start with a C0 from the ground, spinning around, head or tail, never know. To the suit has track, singing a zang and a zoom zoom zoom. Lead me grow a stew in the zone, breaking down all the walls that I know. She did a chat, don't you think I know your plastic face? My bitches is around, everybody told me. And dirty pip, if you dare to show up on my space, I piss like alien, if it burn up your fat ass like you say shit. Mama told me, don't forget your dream, focus on this. Life is not a game, we only fight for what we need. When we ask it who run the world, yes we say girl. But they call me Katay, so can I run the world? Can I?